Yes.
Okay, Baltimore City Council Budget and Appropriations Committee. We're here for Council Bill 20-0527, ordinance of estimates for the fiscal year ending June 30, 2021. I'm Councilman Eric Costello from the 11th District, Chair of the committee. We are joined by Councilman Leon Pinkett, Vice Chair of the committee, 7th District, Council Vice President Sharon Green Middleton, 6th District, Member of Committee, Councilman Isaac Gitzy Schleifer, 5th District, Member of the Committee, Councilman Bill Henry, 4th District, Member of the Committee. We are also joined by Council President Brandon Scott, Councilwoman Shannon Sneed, 13th District, Member of the Committee, Councilman Ryan Dorsey, 3rd District, Councilman Chris Burnett, 8th District. Okay, and we are here today for the Mayor's Office of Minority and Women-Owned Business Development. And we also have
And the Minority and Women's the Minority and Women's Business Opportunity Office.
Thank you.
At the Law Department.
I know the functions and I know what they do. I just always scramble the name. I'm going to turn it over to you folks. Whoever wants to go first, if you could keep your presentation in the 5 to 7 minute range each, that would be greatly appreciated. And then we'll hop into questions from council members.
Thank you, Chairman Costello. I appreciate it. My name is Tamara Brown. I'm the Chief of the Minority and Women's Business Opportunity Office out of the Baltimore City Law Department. I won't go into the distinguish of each of our offices, but I will just go into what our office does. The role of the Minority and Women's Business Opportunity Office is somewhat unique to the Law Department. We are the one area where our office roles and responsibilities are specifically addressed in the Baltimore City Code. We are charged with enforcement. We are the one enforcement portion of the Law Department we enforce Article 5, Subtitle 28, and the often forgotten Subtitle 29. The overall goal of the office is to remedy past discrimination in city contracting. These disparities were validated in findings of an independent task force back in 1990. Significant disparities that were identified in the 2000 disparity study, and every disparity thereafter, which our last disparity study was in 2014. There are also findings of this city council that prevalence of large contract awards to large non-local businesses significantly contributed to the underutilization of the Minority and Women's Business Opportunity Office. So how we mitigate some of this is we conduct thorough reviews of tax records, ownership documentation, and conduct interviews before we certify a business to ensure that they are in fact majority owned and operated by a minority or a woman, and that they are located in the Baltimore City market area. In the past 12 months since I've been the chief of this department, we have decertified a number of businesses that had been certified with the Baltimore City for 10 years or less because they were found to be not minority or women owned, or they were not actually in the market area. We have worked very closely with the Office of the Inspector General over the last 12 months to work through some city contracts, and there have been non-compliance with Article 5, Subtitle 28. So out of that, we have imposed 2 administrative penalties, one in September of 2019, which was the first for Baltimore City in the 40 years that this program has existed. And we also recently imposed an administrative penalty for the second business about 2 weeks ago that was approved at the Board of Estimates. So in FY19, we received 703 applications. And out of those, we actually touched and started going through 591 of those. The city is at an all-time high with certified businesses. We are about 1,580 businesses certified, and those businesses renew their applications every 2 years. So we do review them thoroughly. We've imposed a lot of different practices to ensure that we are reviewing them even at the renewal as if it was a new application. So we've seen an increase in certified businesses. We've seen an increase in investigations to ensure that those businesses are being paid by the subcontractors. Compliance was not a major focal point of this office, and you will see that in our when you look at our budget and the areas that we look at, we have changed our goals for the office, and you'll see that coming up in the next fiscal year, where we have increased that to include the compliance piece. Compliance is very important on all city contracts. So, with that being said, I can entertain any questions, or we'll bring up the actual budget, Monica. Okay.
Can
Okay.
you take that presentation down?
Oh, okay. Monica, can you take that down, please? Can you take it? Because he wants you to take it down. Oh, okay.
Okay, we will start with Council President Scott. And we're actually going to come back to Paul Taylor. We're working through some technical issues with his workstation. Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Director. I actually asked my questions earlier directly to the solicitor, but just would reiterate them. One of my biggest concerns is the lack of positions in your agency. I think that you guys do great work, and we are expecting a lot from you. But I think that we need to invest more in the agency itself. So was just interested if you had yourself looked at like agencies in other cities to see, what they're able to accomplish and what staff and how even the agency is oriented.
Um, Thank you, Council President Scott. I actually introduced a nationwide diversity, inclusion, and local government contracting initiative. We're using some technology. We're using Slack, and I am in touch with, we have members of this organization where, Baltimore City is in the forefront of this. We are asked a lot of times, a lot of advice from different cities, different counties, different states on how we've implemented our program. And so I found it was best that we would share best practices. And so that is a new initiative that I have. So far, we have cooperation from Providence, Rhode Island, Boston, Massachusetts, Buffalo, New York City, and just about every jurisdiction in the state of Maryland. And from there, we're going to share best practices. And so one of the pages on our Slack discussion board is, how is your office structured? What I found is some offices do just certifications, some offices do just the compliance piece. We're unique where we're doing both within here. So we will have that data once I get more people collectively involved in the group and we start putting the numbers in. We are collecting that. And we do have a great, robust best practices plan across the nation. We want to be the lead of that, and we are. So we're starting that discussion across the nation.
Mr. President, you good? Okay, we will now go in the random order that you appear on my WebEx. This hearing's lottery winner is Councilman Bill Henry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Brown and I have spoken extensively. I have no questions at this time. Thank you.
Councilman Burnett.
I'm good to go, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Councilwoman Sneed.
Thank you. I'm good to go.
Council Vice President Middleton.
No questions. Thank you.
Councilman Schleifer.
I'm good.
Councilman Dorsey. All right, this was clearly a tough
Are we
crowd.
good now?
I think we are. I'm waiting on Paul. Paul will be on in a second. So, oh, Councilman Pinkett, I am so sorry, sir. You
Mr.
was
Chair,
moving the window
Mr. Chair,
around. Yes, sir, Mr. President. Mr. President. Mr. President.
Hey, Mr. Chair, I think I may have froze or you did. I don't know which one. So I missed the last couple of minutes
Oh.
of the response from Ms. Brown, but I think I know where she was going with it, but just wanted to make sure that I didn't miss anything substantive.
Ms. Brown, can you run that back a little bit?
Sure. Did you hear that we started a nationwide discussion? We have an online forum that we started here in Baltimore City with other jurisdictions, including all the jurisdictions within Maryland, Rhode Island, Boston, Buffalo, New York. Some other cities have joined us. So we're doing that study now. We're going to collect that data within that forum to see how other offices are operating. I didn't have an actual substantive number or how they're operating. Did you get that, Council President? Mr. President? Okay.
We'll come back to the president. We're gonna jump over to Vice Chairman Pinkett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Director Brown, I think that earlier, Director Raymond mentioned there was like 20, I want to say like 20-something thousand vendors in City Buy. But he couldn't give us a number on the number of MBE, WBEs that are in City Buy. Do you know that number?
I don't have the number, but I can tell you that when we when we certify MBEs and WBEs, the letter that they receive from our office does encourage them to register in City Buy. That's part of our registration process. So, and when they get a renewal, we also encourage them. I can't search, I don't know how to search by MBE or WBE, but I know that when I did come and take over the office, that at the time, the city purchasing agents did ask me for a list of all MBEs and WBEs, their tax ID information. So we did give them the entire database that we had at the time. But again, every time we certify someone, we send them their certification letter, and that does include directions to get registered in City Buy.
Yeah, I think it would be beneficial also as a performance measure to determine how many of those certified MBE WBs actually become part of our City Buy, so that we know that they are in a position to be utilized as a vendor for a variety of city services. My second question, excuse me, is related to, I know that one of the functions of this particular agency is to set the contract participation goals. Are you also responsible for making certain that those goals are achieved, or is that the responsibility of another entity within the city?
That is the responsibility of our office to ensure that the goals are achieved after we establish the goals.
And can you speak a little bit to how that process happens, especially when we're talking about some contracts being re-awarded, through various functions of the Board of Estimates?
Okay, so we establish the contract goals, and then once the contract is awarded, right now we're doing this manually. We go back to it depends on the construction contracts. They have certain agencies are using a document where they verify that the sub has been paid, and we get a monthly report from some agencies. From other agencies, we know that the contracts, once they're awarded, we know the goals, and we check in with them to see how much the sub has been paid and the prime has been paid by the city. But for the most part, we reach out to the subcontractors. And what we're doing now is we're kind of collecting the data because we just received a new compliance system, an online system. So we're going to have to upload all of the city contracts, and we have a baseline to start at. So I have a spreadsheet with all of the city contracts that I'm working on right now. And as we're going through it, we're contacting the subs to ensure they've been paid. We ask them for copies of invoices, and we're putting those percentages in this spreadsheet for every city contract. Right now, that's how we do a compliance review. For a renewal, an increase, or an extension of a contract before it goes to the board, we verify that the sub has been paid, and we look at the percentage. And that's why when I mentioned that two vendors were we imposed administrative sanctions on them, one because they weren't compliant and they weren't using their MBEs and WBEs. So We're certainly doing that. Unfortunately, we have to do it manually right now, but once we get the software in place, this prime and the sub will have accounts. They'll log in. It's a web-based program, and the subs will go in and verify that they've received payment on the contract. And every time the prime is paid, we'll know how that performance is going. They'll get an alert if they're falling behind, and we'll be able to conduct better compliance reviews once the software is in place. And I'm actively working with the vendor now. The site is actually up. We just have to put all the contracts in, so we're getting there. And the certifications will also be in that same database.
And so am I to understand that, so how do we do it now if we'll be more efficient when the software is in place? How does that work now? And how do we look at timeliness of payment in our review process? Because we often hear on the council, the horror stories of subs that are challenged because of the timeliness of payment. And it would be a shame to continue to reward bad behavior on the part of Prime.
Absolutely. So right now, how we're doing it, again, as I stated, it's manual. Unless we receive communication from a sub that they haven't received payment in a timely fashion, we're kind of reactive at this point. When we get the software is going to plug into the financial system, and or we will get a data dump every month from the financial system. So we will know that when the prime is paid, and there will be a 7-day, the system automatically, we've triggered a 7-day notification. They have 7 days to pay the sub as it's dictated in Article 5, Subtitle 28. So unfortunately, we haven't had the technology to impose that on every city contract. There's no way we would know when a prime is being paid. However, that is changing. And once we stand up the software and get everything in the system and get it plugged into the financial system, we'll know. And then the sub will get an email and they will go in and verify that they've been paid within 7 days. And so I am writing some liquidated damages language within all of our city contracts. And if a sub is not paid within the 7 days, once that's cleared and approved, we will be imposing liquidated damages as we do with the living wages and other areas for non-payment, because that is in the law, and we will be imposing that. We just have to get the system in place.
The last question really quickly. So is this software something new, or is this practices that maybe other municipalities have been using for some years now?
So this software is new. Mute.
Go ahead.
You mute. Sorry.
Sorry.
There's some feedback. So this software is. One moment. Okay, this software is new to Baltimore City. Can you hear me? Okay, this software is new to Baltimore City. We are working with the vendor right now. I think it's been in works for some years now, from my understanding, before I came to the city. It was in works, but we are, it will be new to the city. A lot of other jurisdictions use it. It's B2G now, which is a very sophisticated software. It's web-based, so you don't have to, it's not an actual piece of software. Vendors can log into it, and the data will be live. And I forgot the other part of your question. I'm sorry.
No, you answered the question. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just think it's a shame that with all the issues that we've documented over the years as it relates to subs and the timeliness of payment, and that we're just now, unfortunately, under your leadership, moving to a place where there's the potential for consistent payment and a formalized way to monitor, make certain that our primes are doing what they are contractually obligated to. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Paul, you ready? I'm going to pass the chairmanship over to Council or Vice Chair Pinkett.
Mr. Taylor, you have to unmute.
There we go. Is that better? Yes, great. Thank you for inviting me to present today, and I just wanted to come and just tell you a little bit about what the Small Business and Women-Owned Business and Minority-Owned Business Office does, which that office is focused mainly on providing technical assistance to small businesses as it relates to the Small Business Resource Center. In the mayor's office, we're an advocate for the small business community and the minority business community, women-owned business community who are engaged in doing work with the city or desire to do work with the city. And we make sure that we guide them as needed. If there are small businesses that need help with getting permits or access to capital, we provide those kinds of assistance also. And then one of the other important things that we do is that for early stage startup companies, people who have the desire to start a business, we provide them with the technical assistance to guide them through what the steps they would take to have to start and operate a successful business in Baltimore. One of the challenges that a lot of businesses have come to us with is figuring out how do they actually navigate through Baltimore City's permit process. And while it's getting better, we make sure that we can guide them through the steps to get permits for their businesses, to understand what permits they're going to need for their business, and so forth. And so we've done that. And many of the services that we provide it through partners such as SCORE and SBA, the Small Business Development Center. We provide assistance. We host them in many cases in our workshops, and they provide access to information on starting and operating a small business. With COVID, of course, we aren't able to meet in person, but what we have done is set up some web portals where people can actually go online and still take our courses. We do that with business plans. We do that with our accounting services and some of the other programs that we have. So those are the main areas where the Resource Center has been able, and the Small Business Office has been able to assist small business. We do that with a very scaled down staff. We also provide services such as, under my leadership, we have the Main Streets program, which is run by Ms. Verna Jones. And so that's a program that's doing well in the city and really trying to help all of the commercial districts in the area to really thrive and succeed in ways that we know we can, and we can improve those services. Those are the major items, and I'm available for questions. Put the slide up. So I don't know if you need me to just go through what this is. So this is really focused on innovation in government. The Mayor's Office of Minority and Women-Owned Business provides the city with primarily advocacy and help with small business. We partner with Ms. Tamara Brown, Chief Brown, on many issues that come up around small business and making sure that we can find the appropriate contractors for the services that are being offered, or the city is looking for contractors to provide those services. I'm not going to read the rest of this. I think I've discussed most of it, unless you need me to. Any questions for me?
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. President Scott, are you still with us? Did you have any questions of Mr. Taylor? I'm sorry, President Scott, are you with us? Mr. Taylor, I don't have it in front of me, but can you, for the benefit of the audience, can you give us the performance goals for both the Small Business Resource Center and Main Streets?
Sure. The goals have been focused on a couple of things. One is to make sure that we have an efficient approach to providing the services that we have. We also have goals around how many clients that we service on an annual basis that come to our classes, that take our courses, that come to us for assistance. Those goals have been around 1,200 clients that actually went up last year to about 1,400. But again, with COVID this year, we know that we're going to see a significant drop off in the amount of clients that come to see us. We also, even though this wasn't one of our formal goals, we also looked at, are we able to get people access to capital? And so we've been working with, and especially with COVID, we've worked with an organization called Lendistry and Goldman Sachs, and really have gotten a lot of our clients in front of them so that they can apply for funding also. So currently there's just a little over $5 million in funding that has gone through that program, Lendistry. We also work with Baltimore Baltimore Business Lending, and to provide many of those clients with not only technical assistance, but make sure that they get in front of the right lenders. And BBL, Baltimore Business Lending, has been very, very forthright in helping us to get companies funded for some of their initial startup programs.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Can you, and I'm sorry, please excuse me for not seeing it. Can you tell me which volume of the budget book and what page those goals are on?
So, Mr. Chair, since the Paul's office is an activity under mayoralty, we don't publish the goals for that particular activity. All the other presentations have been services under an agency. So if it's all right with you, if it's okay with Paul to send them directly to the committee, but we don't publish individual activity level goals just because we don't have space in the books.
But okay, and you said you will send those, because I think it's critical, especially the activities that come under Mr. Taylor's shop, especially as it relates to small business and Main Streets, that we need to see more than just narrative about what the activity of that particular department is. We need to see the actual performance of that department. So it's critical that we see those numbers. I'm quite sure that there are other questions, so I'm going to go and, as Chairman Costello did, I'll go in the order that I see on the WebEx meeting. So Councilman Henry, did you have any questions?
Nope, I'm good. Thanks, Paul.
Councilwoman Sneed?
We mentioned the main streets, and that's been a vocal point for me, especially in our district with Bel Air Road and Monument Street. And I'm wondering how we are going to improve, like Penn North, Monument Street, Bel Air, and some of our main streets that are kind of struggling right now. And since we do have COVID, I'm just wondering how we are going to address the needs of those communities to see it get better.
Mr. Taylor, you're on mute. You're on mute.
That's better? Yeah. Okay. So one of the critical things that we've been doing is making sure that the Main Street communities, along with some of the other commercial corridors, get access to information about all of the things that we've been able to pull together to assist with small businesses. And a lot of the work has been done in cooperation with Baltimore Development Corporation, who's been actively working with small business with their grant program, with their manufacturing program, and actually now with the Design for Distancing program that's being held up to really sort of help those small business communities. We've been trying to make sure that they get those main streets and other districts get that information so that they can apply and use some of the resources that are coming down. And hopefully, as we continue to look for resources, we're making sure that those resources are available and it's visible to all of the Main Street communities and also the other communities.
Are we able to do that with the amount of money that we have allocated to the main streets? Like, should we just be looking to do something else? Because I feel like we've been in this fight for a number of years, and not much has changed on these corridors.
Yeah, I think, I mean, as you know, welcome to more resources for all the work that we're trying to do. There's always other competing priorities, but one of the things that we think is important is that if we, with COVID, one of the things that's happened now is we've gotten federal help, we've got state help, and we really need to make sure that those resources continue to come to our commercial districts. You know, as we know, with many of them have been locked down for 2 months now, it is critical that we make sure that those resources flow to those organizations so that the businesses in those corridors can stand up. You're right. If we could increase the budget, we would love to see an increase in that budget immediately to provide additional assistance, more resources for the work that Verna's doing, more coordination among the Main Street managers. We would love to see more of that activity. We talk to them on a regular basis to find out some of their needs, and of course, resources. The one thing that they make sure that they call us and ask for on a continuous basis.
Okay, thank you.
And Councilman Sneed, thank you for that line of questioning. It makes it extremely difficult without having any performance measures in front of us to even make an assessment if the current level of funding is appropriate, or if Mr. Taylor's shop is actually meeting any goals to help move those districts forward. We've got to have some analysis in front of us to really even understand if the program is effective, if it's impactful, what needs to be changed. I don't even know how we can, this is budget season, I don't even know how we can make a true evaluation of that activity without having numbers in front of us. Vice President Middleton.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. I guess this question is for Paul too. I know that as development takes place really throughout the city, a number of developers want to make sure they follow the, the hiring of minorities. I have, in a sense, been directing some of them to your office. Is that a good direction?
Well, there's two of us that actually work on this. For compliance, you would definitely be talking to Ms. Tamara Brown's office. For me, what I try to do is to foster those relationships so that the business community, the developers, primes, and the subs can come together and see the opportunities. Of course, we can't force them to work together, but we at least can direct them so that they can learn what it takes to put their RFPs together, put their numbers together so that they can work with some of the prime contractors on numerous projects around the city. We're doing that with Port Covington. We're doing that with some of the other projects around. We've done some work with Lexington Market to make sure that we have the right contractors in place to do that work.
Okay, thank you. Because I know that things are going to be beefing up in Park Heights, and I've been getting calls on, just resources, hiring resources to make sure they're, hiring minorities and women. Thank you.
Councilman Burnett. Councilman Burnett. Councilman Dorsey. Councilman Dorsey. Councilman Slifer. Councilman Slifer.
I'm good. I don't have any questions.
Okay, thank you. Before I turn it back over to Chairman Costello, I just had a recommendation for Mr. Senemy. If there are any other activity or services that are activities that might not be reflected in the budget book, I think it's beneficial to that those directors or the individuals who are leading those activities to bring before us, what their performance measures are, even though it's not reflected in the book. I don't think it's anything that will preclude them from presenting it to us during this hearing. And it just makes our decision-making process easier to have that information in front of us rather than having to have that presented to us at some later date. And so if there are any other activities similar to that, I would ask that they come prepared to present. Chairman Costello.
I'm pretty sure that's the only one. I will double check the schedule, but I'm almost certain that this is the only one because Paul's office happens to fall under mayoralty with a whole host of other activities. I think that's the only one.
Colleagues, any other questions? Okay, we are going into recess. We will be back at 6:30 p.m. for the Health Department.